Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Nithsdale Area Committee, which is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally and using their title, for example, Councillor Smith, so that it is clear who are councillors and who, by the process of elimination, are officers. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. And if you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members, and no material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. And all members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We will now move to sedurant. Apologies. Tracy, can you provide the sedurant indicating who is participating remotely, and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Morning, members. We've got 15 members present in total, 5 members present in the Council chambers, being the Chair, the Vice Chair, Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Stitt, and Ryan McLaughlin, North West and Fleece Youth Council representative. And we've got 10 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillors Bell, Councillor Beretti, Councillor Blake, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Dorward, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Jordan, Councillor Lowe, Councillor Walters and Councillor Wood. We've got 3 apologies from Councillors Hislop, Councillor Malcolm Johnston and Councillor Slater, and 1 member not present at the start of the meeting is Councillor Tracy Little. Thank you, Chair.
I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Item 2, do we have any declarations of interest? And do members have any statement of connection or declaration of interest to declare based on the definition? A statement of connection. For transparency reasons, members may wish to make a public statement or a declaration of interest. Members now require to leave the meeting for that item. Do we have any interest? Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous meeting of the 11th of September 2024. Are we happy to note the minutes? Thank you. We move to item 4. Now, the first report we are being asked to consider today is the end-of-year performance report from the Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Directorate, and it's in relation to the performance in Nithsdale. Now, this is a very detailed report offering a great deal of information specific to our area, and it is good to see in the appendices that performance figures are set against those for the rest of Dumfries and Galloway and the Scottish averages. Now, this offers a clear comparative picture for members and the public. And I'm particularly encouraged to read about His Majesty's inspections mentioning the strengths in our schools. And it is also encouraging to see the strengths identified by the Care Inspectorate in 7 of our early learning and childcare settings. I would like to welcome to the meeting Joanne Dillon, head teacher from the Dumfries Academy, and Bernie Jones, head teacher from St Joseph's College, to the meeting, who are joined by Alison Chambers and Karen Bryden in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. A big welcome to the head teachers and a thank you for taking the time to attend this committee. I'm sure members will appreciate that while you can answer generic questions, there are sensitivities around questions or comments identifying specific schools or individuals, and I'll ask members to bear this in mind when asking questions. I'll now open the floor to members' questions and comments. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for the comprehensive report. It's in great detail. Page 30, we querying SQA attainment, Nithsdale trends in S5, A6. The S5, although last year was better, it's still showing a 5-year trend of minuses, and I think the S6 is quite disturbing when you see all the minuses in the column. Is there any feedback on that?
Thank you, Councillor Stitt, for the question. I would agree with you, the 5-year trend does not look positive at all, and what we would say that is reflected in the national picture as well. We also have a number of schools where we are looking at provision and offer, where we in the past would have young people sitting 5 subjects. That's not necessarily the case. So when we compare ourselves to what is set by Scottish Government in terms of their standards, then we are looking at how we can now get back to that point. But we absolutely recognise that with attendance, with the health and well-being of our young people, and with that drop across Scotland, that is not a picture that we like to see, but we understand where it is. But we're now working towards how do we put provision in to ensure that young people are getting back to the standard that perhaps we had in the past.
That's fine, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll need to read from my notes because I get a bit of brain fog every now and again, so just to clarify that. Thank you, Chair, and I'm glad that you mentioned the sensitivity, because on page 232 it mentions staff by name and how much they are paid. Was that supposed to be in the report? Because I don't think that should be in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Yes, that was an error that should have been removed from that. We did ask schools to ensure that these reports were anonymised. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. On page 19, 4.6, it talks about the Care Inspectorate visit, where we had 7 local authorities, schools visited, and we recognise the following strengths, and that's really encouraging. But sometimes it's also helpful for members to understand if there are any weaknesses in the identified by the visit, and if so, I think it would be reasonable to expect any weaknesses to be identified as well. And I have a follow-up question, and it's on the Pupil Equity Fund, and it's in the same paper, so if we're doing that at the same time, before he answers, he's asked you that question as well. I think that's a very interesting report, and some of the initiatives that are introduced are great. There's one in my ward that doesn't provide very much information, and it's maybe just been omitted from the paper. It's on page 179 and 180. It's anchored primary. It has only 3 paragraphs on the Pupil Equity Fund, where some others have a number of pages detailing what's specifically done. And I don't know whether it's been omitted by accident or whether the school didn't understand what was being asked, because I think members asked for some examples of success and how that happened in every school. But there is a concerning element in that as well, where the head teacher says in the document, when I can find it, at inspection we were told specifically to target only preschool meal children. I would worry about that, because you have kids with dyslexia and other challenges in their lives that they need support as well, although they might not necessarily qualify for free school meals. So I'd be worried if the inspectorate are dictating how our schools spend their money, and that's documented in this paper. So if you can respond, please. And if no, I'd be happy to have a follow-up explanation offline shared with all members, if that's possible. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Did you want to come in on that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Dempster. As far as your question, comment around areas for development for our settings, they are all detailed in the individual reports that are published both by the Care Inspectorate and by His Majesty's Inspectors. And I think it's perhaps the wording, the detail and analysis of committee reports are asked to highlight successes and strengths. So we've absolutely followed that protocol of successes and strengths, but every setting does have areas for development, and they are noted in the reports which are accessible on either Care Inspectorate website or Education Scotland website. The PEF reports, head teachers, there's a couple of templates that head teachers can use to complete their PEF reports, Pupil Equity Fund reports. We have made some changes to them over the last couple of years, and what we've found this year is that some head teachers are using different versions of the form, and that's something for us to ensure that there is that continuity across the piece. As far as your comment around HMIE targeting, directing head teachers to target FME pupils, obviously we weren't in that conversation, but Pupil Equity Fund money is allocated to schools based on the number of pupils that were in receipt of free school meals at that moment in time. However, there is national and local operational guidance which was available and presented at Education and Learning Committee on the PEF report last time, and it details different family groupings that can be targeted and supported through pupil equity funding money. So there's 6 identified family groupings which are in there.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Walters.
Hi, thanks very much for a very interesting and detailed report. But I had a couple of questions about the early pages. The page 23, where we're talking about the service plan annual performance, there's a few segments there that the data is not available. That seems to be fairly crucial information. The literacy and numeracy national 4s and the percentage of pupils. I just wondered, are we going to be able to get this information later, or is this something there's a reason why it's not available at the moment? That's page 23 and 24. That's one question. And then the other question is page 29, which is the levels of literacy, which seems fairly crucial to me. And this isn't a criticism. I'm just trying to understand the tables that are on page 29. The first one, about labelled P1, says Nithsdale is 73.9%, Scotland's 80%, 80.6%, and Dumfries and Galloway is 74.7%. So that's quite a substantial difference. And I wonder what generally we were looking at doing in terms of increasing literacy rates, obviously preschool as well as in the schools themselves. That's my 2 questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. I think that those reports that are not yet available, they could be the 12 monthly reports. There are 6-month and 12 monthly reports that come in. Yes, thank you. And Alison, would you like to take the other part of the question?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Walters. In terms of our ASL data, our literacy and numeracy, when we compare ourselves, Dumfries Galloway, to the national, we have to be aware and take cognizance of the fact that we're in family group 4, so therefore the fact that we are not meeting the national average is because we are not a national average authority. However, in saying that, we are looking at different measures and different strategies in terms of looking at how to improve both our literacy and numeracy, not just in P1, 4 and 7 and 3, but across the board. And we have literacy and numeracy strategies that start from nursery all the way through, trying to improve the provision within our schools. Also, in terms of the data that is gathered, it's gathered based on moderation at a school level. So this is not a test that is set for young people. This is about interpretation and looking at the data across the board. So therefore there's teacher judgment in there, and we are working with our head teachers in our schools to look at that teacher judgment to ensure that we are judging in a comparative manner to our other local authorities. So although our data perhaps is not where the national average is, we are certainly looking at it across the board at all levels, and we have now improved when we draw that data from schools. In the past, we drew that data both in February for an uplift and then in June to see what we could do to improve. We are now looking at that in 3 times a year, so there has just been an uplift of data for resale in November, and that will allow officers within the central team to work with their head teachers to look at that progression, to see if we can track that progression, see where there are areas for improvement, and then put support into schools to ensure that we are absolutely striving to make sure that our young people across Dumfries and Galloway are getting the correct levels at the correct time.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Walters. Councillor Dorward.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you very much for the report. Extremely comprehensive and lots of interesting bedtime reading. I really welcome the fact that there's going to be some standardisation in terms of the PEF reports. You know, it's whilst I totally accept that there's a degree of autonomy for head teachers to look to spend the monies as they see fit within the categories that they can, it can be quite challenging for elected members to go through these as they sit, but fantastic to see what's being done. There's a great deal of creativity and innovation being done as well. So that's to be commended. My question is page 32, attendance and exclusion. Fairly stark figures. It's a little table on page 32, and whilst attendance is up in terms of the national average, which is good to see, the pupil exclusion rate is higher in Nithsdale than it is either in D&G. It's considerably higher than the national average or national number, and it's not, 26.8. I'd probably like to understand what that means in terms of 1,000 pupils. Is that massively challenging or not? Is 16.6 massively challenging or not? Does it depend on the pupil? So a little bit of information about that would be useful. But is there an issue or a theme there going forward? And is that something we need to look at more closely? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Yes, Karen.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Yes, and if I could give you perhaps a bit more detail around the exclusion figures, because as you point out, it's presented as a rate per 1,000 pupils. So for Nithsdale, within that reporting period in the primary schools, it was 29 pupils were excluded in total across 10 different schools, with 14 pupils having more than one exclusion. And in our secondaries, it was 95 pupils in total across 6 secondary schools, with 31 pupils having more than one exclusion. And we're very much focused on the fact that the purpose of an exclusion is for a plan to be either created or amended for a young person to ensure that the supports are in place for them to be able to be in a position to attend and access school in all ways possible.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Dorward?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for that response. Does that, effectively what we're saying is we have pockets of exclusion. It's not a in that sense in some ways, which is quite challenging. And I get what you're saying, and a plan has to be there. I suppose the concern for me is the numbers. I'd be looking at pure numbers game. And it's I suppose the amount of what's the word? The amount of attention that these require. Is that quite a burdensome? That's the wrong word. Is that quite a challenging thing for schools and teachers to do? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. I'll come back in there, and just to say that through Strategic Equity Fund money, we have appointed nurture teachers across 4 of our clusters last year. So that was Sanker Cluster, Northwest Community Campus Cluster, Stranraer Academy Cluster and Douglas Ewart Cluster. And this year we have now appointed nurture teachers across the Dumfries Borough as well, who are supporting nurture initiatives to further support our young people within our schools, to help with them with perhaps reasons that their behaviours are being displayed in the ways that they are. But I'll hand over now to our secondary school colleagues, to the head teachers, to perhaps give a bit more understanding of what that feels like on the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Darward. My name is Joanne Dillon, head teacher at Dumfries Academy. Obviously, I can only speak for our own experiences, but the nurture principles are well established across secondary school settings, particularly in our school, and we work with colleagues to put in place appropriate professional learning so that we can seek out alternatives to exclusion. Nurturing approaches are meant to be proactive rather than reactive, and young people most at risk in missing out in education are targeted with those approaches so that we can ensure that we seek alternative provision. And indeed, we keep a running total of exclusions. We manage the monthly data. We discuss young people who are at risk, and we look to seek support from external agencies and partners to ensure that we avoid exclusions where possible. Only really in extreme circumstances would we exclude a young person, and that would be normally for the purposes of the health and safety around that child, and also other staff and children who may be affected by a particular incident that needs a period of rest and reflection in order to put a plan in place. So that would be our approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Dorward?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the comprehensive response. It's really appreciated. It's great to know that nurture principles are being deployed across the Nithsdale area, and that there is a proactive, not reactive response. So that's reassuring. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer that question.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Oh, thank you, Chair. On page 163, they discuss issues around, I'm not going to name the school, but they discuss issues around exclusion and children not turning up to school. Are these the children that would attend something like the inclusion hubs? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Karen, would you like to take that one?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we look at these reports, and obviously we don't have the detail of the background of the individual circumstances in front of us and within these, but absolutely our schools are working to reduce the exclusions and to promote attendance wherever possible. We have a very proactive attendance group at the moment who are working with national colleagues as well to look at strategies to improve and increase attendance across our schools.
Thank you, Karen. Does that help, Councillor Stevenson? Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? We don't appear to have any further comments or questions. Well, now, yes, Dempster.
Just a comment, Chair, and not necessarily for today, but we have 29 exclusions in Nithsdale, is that correct, this year? For all I know, it could be from the same school, or it doesn't really matter what the number is. It could be from the same school, and the only way we will know that is if we get a more detailed breakdown. And I know we always respect the confidentiality of the pupil, that's paramount, but we are also able to have a confidential document presented to us that excludes members of the public so that we can understand better what's happening. Not for today, but if that's something members were interested in doing, maybe at some time in the future, in specific items, we might ask if that could be brought to us, and I would hope that would be something that we'd be able to accommodate. So just an observation rather than a question, Provost, for today.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Before we move to recommendations, I would just like to thank Joanne Dillon from... Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, you just come in there.
No, it's been on for a wee while actually, Chair. Just so I'm absolutely clear here, the number in exclusions, is that the total number, and that includes the same child maybe multiple times? Can we just be absolutely clear? Is that number we've got, is that for separate children, or is that for the combined total of all the children, irrespective of how many there are? Because I'd be a bit worried if it was for 2 or 3 children, where we would actually identify them if we got that information to hand. So just a bit of clarification on that, because I'm not sure I picked it up correctly at the start.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. That's a good question. Karen?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Yep, so for clarity, across the primaries, 29 pupils in total were excluded temporarily across 10 different schools. But out of that 29, 14 pupils had more than one exclusion. And in our secondaries, 95 pupils in total were excluded across 6 secondary schools. And out of that 95, 31 pupils had more than one exclusion.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Yes, did you want to come back
Yeah, thanks
in?
very much. That's much clearer. Thanks very much.
Good, thank you. Now, as we don't appear to have any further comments or questions, before I move to the recommendations, I would just first like to thank Joanne Dillon from Dumfries Academy and Bernie Jones from St Joseph's for their attendance here today. Thank you so much for coming along today. And also to Karen and Alison for their answers to our questions today. Thank you so much. We will now move to recommendations. Members are asked to, 1, consider the quality and curriculum area-based successes and developments as detailed in the detail and analysis section of this report, paragraphs 4.3, 4.14. 2, scrutinise the area report of Nithsdale as set out in Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, and 4, review the Pupil Equity Fund summary for Nithsdale as set out in Appendix 3. Thank you. We will now move to item 5. Our second and final report for consideration is to seek members' views regarding the current and the future arrangements for area committees. The Review of Standing Orders Subcommittee agreed to carry out a review of area committees and arranged for a member workshop and a questionnaire to elicit views, and these are summarised in the report appendices. It was also agreed that feedback from the workshops and proposed next steps will be considered by area committees, and that is the purpose of today's report. Members are asked to consider the workshop feedback, Appendix 1 and the survey, Appendix 2, and provide any additional comment on the 7 questions listed in 4.2.1. I'll first ask members whether members have any comments on the feedback summarised in the appendices. Then go on to ask for comments on the 7 questions or proposals in turn. Members, do you have any comments on the feedback contained in the appendices? And we have Stuart Hamilton is on Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. As we are in an area committee and the considerations in this report are key to our future operations, I want to go through section 4.2.1 of the report methodically. Now I'll take these questions one at a time for member comments and consideration. Can I refer you to the questions at 4.2.1 and to ensure that we capture all member comments fully, and I'd like to take the questions in turn and invite members to comment. Question 1. Do we wish to continue to receive the current style 6-month performance reports on service plans? Do we have any comments on that? Do we wish to continue as we are?
Yes.
It would appear that we do. Thank you. Sorry, we do have some speakers that haven't. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for taking us through these papers methodically. I think the consensus appears to be yes, we do, but can I ask that when we do receive reports, that as with the report this morning from our education colleagues, we have the appropriate people there to answer the questions, because often at previous area committees we haven't had people who can answer the questions available, and they have to take the question away and bring it back or provide us with an answer in writing. To encourage debate and discussion, it would be useful to have the appropriate individuals attending the meeting. I appreciate that's additional time for officers. However, the whole point is to have an open and honest discussion, and it really worked with our education department this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodd. We'll certainly take that point forward, that we will try and ensure that the appropriate people are in place. Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Provost. Yes, I agree that we stay as we are in that question 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just support what Councillor Dorward said? Because there's one area committee we attended. I think he was at Stewardry, and there's one person for the directorate was there, and he had to take 5 points back because nobody was there to answer the question. And I think if we're having 6 monthly reports, they should be there in person to answer the questions.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. We will certainly take note of this. Thank you for future meetings. Do we have any other comments or speakers on this question? Question 1? No. We will now move to question 2. If you should be required to go to the service committee, if yes, should they be required to go to the service committee first? Thanks for your, yeah, that's question 2. To go to the service committees first. Yes, Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chairman, Provost. If the reports go to the Service Committee first, there is no opportunity for input, effective input from this committee, so I think they should come here first, especially as they relate to our area, and then go to Service Committee. Service Committee have the ultimate decision-making authority, but we should still be offered the opportunity to input first. That would be my view.
Do you have any further views on that? Should they come to this committee first before the Service Committee? Well, we've noted Councillor Dempster's comments. Now move to question 3. Councillor Slater.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would agree with Councillor Dempster on that point. Yes, to this committee first. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to question 3. Do the Area Committee wish to undertake deep dive scrutiny reviews on specific issues in a service plan or have update reports instead? Do we have any comments on this proposal from the members? Councillor Dempster.
Again, through you, Provost, I think we should, not only should we do that, we should take on board the points that Councillor Dorward and Councillor Stitt made, that if we are having a deep dive look at any a service plan or update on regular reports, we should specify who we want to see here to present them and ask them to ensure there's a space in their diary so that they can attend. After all, we are a service committee. We're part of the structure of the council and we should be respected as such. The only other comment I would make is in 4.2.2, the community engagement element. I think it's too structured, and one of the things, or the proposal's too structured, and one of the things that we tried to do was give the community that attend, or members of the public that attend, the opportunity to raise whatever issue they wish. They might notify us in advance what it is so that we can have some information to hand for them, but it should not be a structured setup. We should have a space that used to happen in the good old days, where there's space for public engagement, where members of the public could ask a question, be guaranteed a response, if no there, and then certainly a follow-up, but they had the right to determine what the topic was. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. It's certainly worth looking into that and taking that one forward for further scrutiny on that one. Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Sorry, Chair, that's a legacy hand. Apologise.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Do we have any further comments on this question? Councillor Walters.
Yeah, no, just on this question then. Does it have to be an either or? Because that's what the question says. It seems to be saying that you can have a deep dive scrutiny reviews, or we can have update reports. I would hope that we could do both. Continue with the sort of performance reports, and then have the occasional deep dive report. And also, I'm not 100% sure how the process is for the deep dive report. Would it be that in one committee, members would decide that there was a particular aspect of Nithsdale performance that we wanted to examine, and so for the next meeting we would then be able to be presented with a report to go through that? So that's a question and a sort of a comment on that question. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Stuart, would you like to maybe help and clarify that one? Thank you. How we could take that forward?
No problem. So I think neither are mutually exclusive. So I think if members, and we're absolutely in members' hands at the moment in terms of gathering your feedback and consolidating that feedback so that it can be presented back to the review of Standing Order Sub. I think at any area committee, you could determine future business if there was elements of deep dives that members wish to see further scrutiny on. They could request those reports to come forward, or alternatively, with an area committee cycle, there may be pieces of work, projects that officers are working on that they themselves believe that it would be worthy of some scrutiny at area committee level, and the involvement of members at this level, so that there's that level of debate. So I think we're in the process at the moment of gathering your views, and then we'll work out the finer detail, but I would say that neither are mutually exclusive, and it can work both ways in terms of how we would prepare and present those deep dives for you. It could be via an elected member request, or from officers identifying suitable topics.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Walters, does that help?
It does, yes. Thanks very much for that.
Good. Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions on that question 3? Don't appear to have. We'll now move to question 4 on the community engagement, and I'll invite answers and comments on questions 4 and 5 together. Question 4. Do area committees wish to have a programme of engagement with their communities, additional to ongoing methods of ward events and community conversations and the activity of community councils? And question 5. If yes, what format, invitations and frequency would be appropriate? And what are your thoughts on these comments, members? Councillor Dempster.
An interesting thought, Provost, and one that happened before. One of the ways to engage with communities is to go to them rather than insist they come to us. So we could have a roving or an alternative venue for area committees throughout the years across the whole ward, and that might even be going to North West and East, going wherever rather than here. And I know there's an issue now about recordings and make them available to the public, but I would have thought we could have overcome that challenge somehow, because that's the correct way, in my opinion, to engage with communities, is to go to them and see what they have to say, and they will be able to bring to our attention local issues that will never come in any other fashion. And that's whether it's North West Dumfries, Georgetown or wherever. We have enough facilities to accommodate the area committee should we choose to do so. It might take some work, but that would be a suggestion that I hope members would consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. It's an interesting one on having roving meetings. Councillor Beretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yeah, I would also like to strengthen what Councillor Dempster said, because in conversations with Jim over the last 2 years, when we have had to attend committee or community events, sometimes very few people turn up, and that does not capture the spirit or the understanding in the community of what's actually going on. So I would welcome Jim's approach to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Stitt.
Fully supportive of what Jim's proposing, but I think one of the crunch things is the timing of the meetings. I think personally myself, to get the public there to listen to them, it'd have to be evening meetings, because a lot of some of the council consultations that took part in afternoons and certain things, I've been to them, and there's hardly any men public there because the timings aren't suitable. And I think if we're going down that line, we're down at Jim, used to forums after Nithsdale area, they were always at night time where you can attract the public to come and give their points of view.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Yes, it is a really difficult one, that. Whereas once upon a time, we used to have the area committees, and then all the community councils would meet together, and councillors could attend those meetings. So it's really a difficult one to get timings and everyone together. Councillor Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I completely agree with Councillor Dempster's proposal there. My only concern is we would need commitment from the councillors to actually attend, because there's 4 of us in the room out of 16, and that would look absolutely terrible if we headed somewhere else. Now, I'm completely for online working and in person, but we need to make sure there's some level where we all attend and make that commitment. And I know it's difficult, it is hard, you know, just with what goes on in life, but I think we owe it to our communities that if we do that, we actually attend in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Do we have any further comments or questions? No, we don't appear to have any further comments. We will now move to question 6. Would the area committees wish to have the remit to approve community asset transfer requests if possible? And if yes, are there any limitations that should be set? For example, only those recommended for approval or a value limit? Councillor Dempster.
Absolutely. Again, Provost, I think that the area committee are the group that will have the best knowledge of the asset that's being transferred, and I think in fact, I think in all circumstances we should have the remit to approve community asset transfer requests. I think we should also have the remit to determine other matters. For example, I understand that one community group has been asked to pay a significant fee for the transfer of an asset, and that I don't think was ever agreed at committee, certainly in a committee that I'm aware of. That's for another day, but it's circumstances like that that I think this area committee need to have a handle on, and I would certainly support the proposal or suggestion that we approve all types of community asset transfers.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Councillor Dempster here totally, wholeheartedly. I know that's surprising, Councillor Dempster, but we are in agreement here. And I think in this instance, parochialism triumphs. I think we are in the best position in Nithsdale to decide Nithsdale matters, and there shouldn't be a limit on the decision-making process. We're perfectly competent and capable of doing that with advice from officers, obviously. So again, the caveat would be that the appropriate officers attend the meetings. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Councillor Lowe?
Yeah, good morning, Provost. I agree with what's been discussed. We are the people that know our communities. We've often had conversations with the people that are looking to take over the assets. So I agree that we should do this again with the officers present.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Walters?
Yeah, just to say I'm in total agreement with that and go from there. Thanks.
Thank you. Stuart, do you have any comments on that you would like to put forward?
No, just very happy to record member feedback. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments or speak any questions? Thanks. Thank you, members. And the final question on the delegation. Do area committees wish to have the remit to endorse the local place plans? Do we have any comments or views on that? Councillor Dempster?
You've skipped question 7, Provost, which is if there are any limitations that should be set. I would worry if we were going to community asset transfer property, for example, that we rent out and raise income from. I don't think we should be authorised to sell that type of asset. But you want to go back to 7 or are you going to...
We'll go back to that, yes, Councillor Dempster. I missed that point. Yes.
Okay, so that was my opinion in question 7. We should not be allowed to sell an asset where there's a value that's good to the council.
That's a good point. Thank you. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. Totally endorse what Jim said.
Thank you. We'll now move to question 8. Do area committees wish to have the remit to endorse local place plans? Do we have any comments or views? Councillor Dempster.
Again, local knowledge is absolutely essential in this. Of course, we should have the remit to endorse it, but it should be up to Dumfries and Galloway Council to ensure that they find it acceptable, because it will be the council in many ways and the different departments that will support the delivery of the place plans. So yes, we should endorse them, but they should go to full council for determination. That would be my view, probably.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. I agree with you on that. Thank you. Councillor Lowe?
Yes, I'm also in agreement, given the weight of papers that we had at the recent E&I committee for the areas all over Dumfries and Galloway. Yes, it does need to go elsewhere, the full council. But I think that's the route that we should go.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe, especially when we're attending community council meetings, and we've probably heard quite a lot about their place plans, so it's quite good that we could follow through on that with them. Thank you. Councillor Barretti? Sorry, Councillor Barretti. Councillor Dorward first.
Thank you, Chair. I think local knowledge is a powerful thing, and you made a very good point when you said a lot of us attend community councils where we are cited on place planning that's happening in local areas. I think it provides an extra layer of scrutiny, and I totally agree with Councillor Dempster again, which it means that we should be endorsing the place plans. We have the knowledge, we have the contacts to do that, but full council should be determining them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Barretti.
Yes, thank you, Provost. Again, I agree with my ward councillor, Councillor Dempster, that this is something that the local areas should be looking at, and clearly the complexity of local place plans, when you take them into account that you're dealing with the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, it's only the local authority, the regional authority, that can really work with them all and make them function, because otherwise it would be a nightmare if each area committee tried to make it function. Thanks.
No, I agree. Good points. Do we have any further comments? I see that Joanne and Stuart have been recording our views, and these will feed into the report to the ROSO for final decision by the full council.
Councillor Dempster's asking if we can hear. We're going to ask about that.
Sorry?
Councillor Dempster's asking if you're going to ask if there's any questions or comments around the related issues.
Coming on to that. Where was that page?
258. So it's after the last question.
258.
It's about the
Thank you. If we can just move to page 258, the related issues. If I can bring Stuart in, please just cover on that for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Provost. Just a couple of observations. We cannot request that Dumfries Town Board bring performance reporting, but I think it would be useful, given the value that we place on them and what they do for Dumfries Town, that we invite them to share any information they have with us and present to us if they feel they wish to. And it's just a case of ensuring that organisations like that are included in our considerations when we're talking about information coming to the Nithsdale Area Committee. And the other point I'd want to make is, and it's on page 258, 4.2.4.2, work is ongoing about Common Good Subcommittee arrangements and an officer Common Good and Trust Review Group. Where's the political or member input into that? Because we've already made it quite clear in the responses earlier that we didn't want to see change to the Common Good arrangements. So I don't see why officers should be deciding what we do and don't want. And there should certainly be senior political involvement, whether it be a group leader and can be, I don't mind, but there should be some political input in any discussions that are being made about. And it's one of these very items that would be useful going out to the local communities, because in many ways it's their money, we are just the custodians of it. So I would wonder why there's no input from us in working groups like this. I won't get a response for that today because there are no officers here, but we'll get a response to that, I'm sure, during the rest of the consultation process on the area committee and how it will look in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Stuart, would you like to further anything on the related issues?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the last comment by Councillor Dempster, I'm not part of that Common Good review group. I'm happy to get my colleague Fiona Dobney, who's our colleague on that review, to provide some further input to you. You'll note within Appendix 2 there was a question put out to members around about the potential or the desire to amalgamate Common Good subcommittees across the region, or for area committees to indeed take those decisions, and there's certainly a mixed view being recorded in the feedback through that survey that was out to members. I think that, from my understanding, the intention of the review group at the moment in terms of their work is just looking at the support arrangements to Common Good subcommittees in terms of lead officer, financial, governance and legal support, but happy to provide some further feedback to members around about the context of that working group out with the committee.
Thank you, Stuart. We'll look forward to hearing from that report. Councillor Walters.
Yeah, just to follow up on a couple of related issues. The 42.41, I'd obviously welcome the SOSI, a possibility of SOSI report coming to this area committee. I think that would be really interesting. And I just want to check that I'm reading the thing about the integration joint board partnership correctly. That seems to be saying that we used to get a report, but since there have been changes, we'll be no longer getting a report at an area level, which, if that's the case, would seem a bit disappointing, to say the least. And then, to return to the Common Good subcommittee, I had somebody ask me about the Common Good meetings, and when I looked them up, there seem to have been 2 this year, in January and February, and the next one's not scheduled till February 2025. So I think we do need to actually make some sort of progress on making sure that they're they're sort of regularly timetabled, and so the business they need to do with is regularly dealt with. So that's my 2 comments. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Your points have been noted. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. I totally agree with what Jim said there about common good. And well, we've only started with a common good pre-election time into this, and I don't think personally if we're having money at an area committee should make the decision. It should be up to the 3 councillors on that committee plus a lay member. If they're at the meeting, we should discuss and our ward worker. We have got ward meetings scheduled, but my ward worker constantly will ask them because there's no applications to discuss, but I think it should come to the local common good committee, not that area committee.
Thank you, Councillor Stitt. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. And again, it's in common goods. If you look at page 264, item 6, members have made it quite clear by the number of responses that they want to continue the current practice, which is that we decide what happens in conjunction with the local community to their common good. And I think it would also be useful, and it's an opportunity maybe at a later date, we should be looking at assets. We should be looking at the value of assets, the condition of the assets. We should have an asset list, and we should meet regularly to determine what happens, and we do. And it's down to the chair of the area, the area common good, to call the meeting, and it may be only relevant in some circumstances where there are the annual accounts to decide if there are no business being conducted. But it's absolutely imperative, in my view, that it's been devolved to the local community and ward members very recently, and that, in my opinion, is the way it should stay. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Again, your points have been noted. Councillor Blake.
Yeah, very briefly, just in total agreement with the last 2 speakers. It should remain local. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Do we have any further comments, questions? If not, we'll move to the recommendations. Members are asked to note the issues relating to area committees raised by members through a workshop and survey as referenced in paragraph 4.2 and detailed in the appendices 1 and 2. 2.2, provide additional feedback on the issues with a particular focus on the questions highlighted in paragraphs 4.2.1 and 4.2.3. And 2.3, note the timetable for the development of recommendations and decisions by the ROSO subcommittee and the full council as set out in paragraph 4.3. So we have noted. And also that Joanne and Stuart have been recording our views, and these will feed into the report to ROSO for final decision by full council. Thank you, Stuart, for your attendance, and Joanne, thank you. I have no urgent business, so that concludes the meeting. Could I thank you all for your contributions today? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.